right, play offenses that we are avoiding.
Oh, yeah.
I actually didn't really have a lot of these because I felt like the offenses that I'm avoiding have players who are really discounted in fantasy. But one team I would say is Washington. I could see them being horrible. And I could see them being very run heavy because I think that's what Ron Rivera wants to do. And they've got a offensive coordinator who has not called plays and a quarterback who's made one career start. They do have a lot of talent. I don't know if they have a lot of talent. I think they've got two talented wide receivers, like two, above average talent NFL wide receivers. I don't think the running backs are really anything special necessarily. So they're not that good. Washington's a team I'm avoiding except for Dotson. Dotson is a guy that I think is a player to target. How about you? Who are you avoiding?
Some teams I'm avoiding at ADP. And remember, we're not just going to name like the worst offenses here because we're trying to factor in ADP. So one of the first ones for me that comes to mind, I know it's different, a little bit different from where you were at with this, Adam, but the Cowboys for me at ADP are just a team that I just don't really like or want to get much of. I am very nervous about this transition from Kellen Moore to, I guess, Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer calling the offense. I just don't like the design that Mike McCarthy has in his offense, and I think it's going to take some time anyway to get on track. And I know he says he's going to use some of the more concepts, the Kellen Moore concepts, but we'll see. The one thing we know is going to happen is the tempo is going to slow the hell down for the Cowboys, and we're talking about a team that was 1-2-2-1 in the last 4 years in offensive tempo. If that drops to 15th or 16th, we're losing a lot of plays there on offense, and that scares the hell out of me. For Dak Prescott, who you mentioned, like, I'm kind of fine with him at his ADP, but I don't see any real value there. I don't see any upside there. Tony Pollard to me is propped up based on, projection and based on small sample size and not factoring the injury. CeeDee Lamb, I wouldn't really take at ADP. Don't love the value there either.
What? You wouldn't? Yeah. What's wrong with CeeDee Lamb?
Again, I'm down on this entire offense here, especially because I feel
they were very run heavy last year. I mean, that's the thing. We act like they're going from his team that threw the ball all over the place. I mean, Prescott didn't even have that good of a year. Yeah, and
it's not just the run heavy, though. The tempo for me is such a big factor here in fantasy football. We're going from a team that was just moving, trying to get plays into a team that's going to be, let's make sure we try to win this football game. Let's take all the play clock off. Let's run the ball in this spot. Let's throw the ball short in this spot.
They did run the ball a lot last year, a ton. And Dak, look, CeeDee Lamb is so much better than every receiver on that team. He's a fantastic football player. And
I like CeeDee Lamb. It's just like
the line is once again going to be a huge strength. So I think you're overthinking it with the Cowboys, with Lamb anyway. I mean, I could see like Pollard, it is a small sample size and he has to prove that he can hold up. Lamb to me feels like one of the safer players in football.
We can revisit it, and I think Lamb's like a fine pick at his ADP. That's what I said. I didn't say he's like a bad value or anything. He's a fine pick at his ADP, just not the one I would take in that spot. Okay. But there's just factors here that the one I mentioned, and then the second thing is like, we're going from I know we don't want to put too much into this, Adam, but there is something to be said about playing the entire AFC South last year and the NFC North, which had horrible defenses littered throughout both divisions, and then going to play the divisions, the West and I'm blanking on the and the AFC East, the NFC West, AFC East this year. Like, according to Dave's projected strength of schedule, again, Cowboys are facing the 25th easiest schedule against quarterbacks. That's hard. 24th running backs, 25th receivers, 20th tight ends. Like, there's a big difference there in the schedule going into this year versus last year. I don't like this offense at all for fantasy.
Okay. All right, just let's wrap up. Give me just real quick.
One more quick one as a sleeper pick, just because I see a lot of high ADPs here. It's the Jets. Look, the ADP is super high for Breece Hall, despite him coming back from an ACL and what we know about that. Garrett Wilson's ADP skyrocketing. Those are the two that really stand out to me here as question marks, because I just don't buy this definitely being a great offense yet with the question marks they have at offensive tackle. Mekhi Becton's supposed to be back. Really hasn't played much. From what I heard, that knee injury is not easy to come back from. They're counting on like a 38-year-old Dwayne Brown who was injured a lot entire career and injured last year. If both of those guys get hurt again or don't produce, I have no idea what they're going to do at tackle, and I have no idea how an NFL team can produce on offense without tackle. We saw what it did to the Chargers offense last year when they went through that stretch of having to lose both their starting offensive tackles. And the Jets face a really tough schedule, 28th easiest, so 4th hardest for quarterbacks, 25th, 28th, 30th for running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. Really difficult draw for them schedule-wise. So those question marks to me make me think, like, why are we propping up these Jets skill, like for Wilson and Breece Hall specifically? Like, this is an offense that has already produced at a high level. This is an offense that has already been super fantasy successful. I think it's because Aaron Rodgers is attached to it, but I just don't know if that's enough.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, Garrett Wilson had a very productive rookie season.
But look how high he's going in ADP now.
Yeah, I know. I think it's fairly justified.
Okay.
Ideally he'd be a late second round pick instead of a mid or even in the third round. Look, I think if you're nervous about that, Chris kind of said this a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Maybe there shouldn't be such a big gap between Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And let's say you're picking in the middle of the second round, then you want Garrett Wilson. You might want to just pass over him and try to get Olave next. If Olave's not there, maybe you get T. Higgins, something like that. Because Olave was better in every measure. He was better than Garrett Wilson last year. And yeah, I think the argument for Wilson is certainly, and I would take Wilson over Olave. It's Rodgers and a number one receiver. It's one of the most sure things in fantasy football. And Wilson should be a tremendous football player, but I think Olave's got a lot going for him too. So it's not bad if you want to wait around and take a different wide receiver.